Kalispera says, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's program. My name is Tom Papadimitriou, and I have the privilege of serving as the director of the Dean C. and Zoe S. Pappas Interdisciplinary Center for Hellenic Studies at Stockton University. We're one of the sponsors, and we're very pleased to be co-sponsoring this event with the Hellenic University Club, and of course the head of the program committee, Mika Tekura. We want to acknowledge her for her work in this, and of course the Greek American Heritage Society of Philadelphia, and we have here the president, Ilias Iliadis, and members of both organizations. So we're very pleased. Also, we have as co-hosts the Zilberman Family Center for Global Collections, which is one of the University of Pennsylvania organizations. We also need to thank the Penn Library. Here we are in this Kislak Center, in this Van Pelt Dietrich Library, for arranging not only to have us here, but they also arranged a beautiful display in the Leah Library. So if you haven't had a chance prior to this event starting, right afterwards, it will be available as well for you to peruse. Tonight, we are in for a real treat. I'm very excited. It's a journey into sounds, stories, the soul of Greek American music in the early 20th century, and we're guided by none other than Christopher C. King. Christopher King is an ethno-musicologist. He's a writer, producer, and a tireless advocate for traditional music. Over the past 25 years, he's produced an astounding 353 CD collections of historical folk music and from around the world, and he's even a Grammy winner, and with 7 nominations in addition. So that's a very auspicious and great accomplishment. So his work isn't simply about collecting music, however. It's about bringing music to life. And he spent over a decade shining a spotlight on the haunting Myroloia of Epirus, the vibrant dances of Greece, and the deep cultures of the Southern Balkans. He's taken the New York Times to Epirus. He's coordinated documentaries. He's presented these musical treasures throughout Athens, throughout Greece, to New York, Paris, and Washington, and of course to Philadelphia. His major book is worth noting, The Lament from Epirus, that came out in 2018. And this explores the traditional music of northwestern Greece. It was so compelling when it came out that it was translated into Greek the same year. And beyond the books and recordings, Christopher King has worked with the Library of Congress and curated major festivals in Epirus, and even earned honorary Greek citizenship for his dedication to promoting and preserving Greek music. So tonight, Christopher King will guide us through the fascinating role of Greek American communities and early American record labels in spreading Eastern Mediterranean music, complete with recordings from his unparalleled collection of 78 RPM discs, paired with a live musical performance by Nikitas Tampakis, who I also ought to acknowledge is really the person who put this program together. Without Nikitas, we would not have this evening's program. He is also a librarian here. So I think we have to acknowledge Nikitas. And of course, Roger Mgrdichian, virtuoso oud player here from this region. And so I'm so pleased to have them. So we are on a musical journey, and they will transport us back into the early 1900s. So please join me in welcoming Christopher King.
Thank you all for coming this evening. Before I tell this story, or start telling this story, we're going to have a musical interlude by Roger and Nikitas. So what I do when I do this kind of thing that I do is that I call myself a musical time traveler. I like to think of this turntable as like a taxi cab car that takes us backward and forward in time and space. And I want to tell at least part of the story of the Greek-American music experience in the early 20th century, which is going to be an exhibit that I'll be curating at the Nikitas Library in Athens for next year, and I hope to bring it here to America the following year. But before I start this story, I want to explain, because Tom said, you know, I have this accolade and I've been awarded this and that, but at the end of the day, I'm nothing but a collector, a crazy collector. And I've been captivated by these early discs that are now over 100 years old ever since I was the age of 15. So I wanted to read a short passage from the book that Tom mentioned, Lament from Ypres. I am a record collector. The type of disc with which I am obsessed, the 78 RPM phonograph record, is made of slowly decaying organic materials, bound together and coated with synthetic compounds. It is a relic of the past, a fossil. These curious black discs are all that connect us with the best part of our musical past, with the rapture that we were once able to convey through deep song and dance. These records are fragile, yet they were the dominant medium of oracular permanence in commerce for roughly the first 50 years of the 20th century. When I was young, I discovered that 78 recordings, unlike so many other parts of contemporary culture, needed no outside validation, just an attentive, appreciative listener. I was a listener, and the artists that made them were my friends. They were constant. People would betray you, institutions would fail you, but this old music, a music lacking all pretension, would never change. Old performances on 78s transformed me. They became a singular point of reference. I understood my musical surroundings, perhaps even my physical and cultural environment, through this antiquated medium. These recordings form an aperture through which I make sense, or perceive the senselessness, of this world. And as a short introduction, I'm not Greek, even though I'm a Greek citizen, for which I am eternally thankful. I grew up in Southwest Virginia, and when I was 15 years old, I was helping my grandfather clean out a shed that had been lived in by sharecroppers 60 years earlier. And before we were to burn down this shed and make a garden space, we emptied it. Inside, I found a small box of 78s. I'd never listened to a 78 before. And I rescued this small box. I cleaned it. And inside this box of records was a recording called Dark Was the Night, Cold Was the Ground by Blind Willie Johnson. After I washed it and listened to it, I realized there was nothing else in this world for me. There was no other music I wanted to listen to other than this stuff from the past. Now, this is not the exact copy of Dark Was the Night, Cold Was the Ground. This is a slight upgrade, but I'll play it for you. The reason why this is pertinent to this presentation is that, as I write in the book, what Blind Willie Johnson is performing is a miroloi, an instrumental lament for the departed, for loss, for longing. And what I discover in Greece, likewise, is this music, the miroloia, which is songs of remembrance, of death, of loss. So I'll play this. Is Dark Was a Night, Cold Was a Ground, recorded in 1927 in Dallas, Texas. Notable, this is in D, the key of D, and it's pentatonic, and it has no recognizable meter, no beat. Is that better? Okay. Okay, sorry. So this recording, I don't know if you guys knew about the Voyager 2 spacecraft that was launched into the galaxy in order to communicate that there is intelligent life here on Earth, right? There was a gold disc made by Sagan that was supposed to contain information. This recording was etched on that disc. The next recording, which I will play, will introduce our theme. I argue in the book it could have easily have substituted for the Blind Willie Johnson. This is Epirotico Miraloi by Alexis Zumbas. This was recorded in 1926, only 4 months before Blind Willie Johnson made his recording. This was recorded in New York City, 1926. And Zumbas was among the first immigrant musicians to actually travel to the U.S. This recording by Zumbas is like the Blind Willie Johnson recording in the key of D, pentatonic, and with no discernible rhythm. And with Zumbas, the violin is sort of imitating the sounds of wailing, of crying, much in the same way as Blind Willie Johnson's piece is a reflection of weeping. And both recordings are now almost 100 years old.
Στον Πειραιά καθόμουνα κι μες στο Πασαλιμάνι. Στον Πειραιά καθόμουνα κι μες στο Πασαλιμάνι. Μα στο Νιου Υόρκι κάθομαι, στο Μάντισον σε κάνει. Μα στο Νιου Υόρκι κάθομαι, στο Μάντισον σε κάνει. Στον Πειραιά γεννήθηκα και το όνομα μου είναι Σοκρής. Στον Πειραιά γεννήθηκα και το όνομα μου είναι Σοκρής. Μα εδώ ξανά βαπτίστηκα και γίνηκα Πινόκλης. Μα εδώ ξανά βαπτίστηκα και γίνηκα Πινόκλης. Και ξέρετε βρε αργαντασίδες πως μπερδεύτηκε ο κόμπος. Και ξέρετε βρε αργαντασίδες πως μπερδεύτηκε ο κόμπος. Γιατί την ανακαλύψε αυτή τη γη ο Κολόμπος. Γιατί την ανακαλύψε αυτή τη γη ο Κολόμπος.
Nikitas, before I go forward, can you explain the lyrics really quickly? They're funny.
So, I think even if you're not a Greek speaker, you might have caught a couple of these songs. So, or the words in these songs. It's a song that's kind of in a Greeklish dialect. It kind of talks about the classic Ellis Island story when immigrants come over and their name is one thing, then all of a sudden it becomes something completely different. So this man, kind of reluctantly, unwilling, didn't want to leave his homeland, but he came to the New World, and he was born Sokris, and his name all of a sudden became Binoklis, switching the names around. And so he wishes he was back in Piraeus, but no, he's now in New Yorkie, and he's not happy there, and he's like sort of shaking his fist at Christopher Columbus, saying, why did you have to go and discover this new world?
Thank you. Well, so to introduce the actual subject, what I wanted to talk about to sort of open up and explore is this concept of the Greek American music experience, because it's actually quite unique. It's a fusion of, I think, the Greek people's love of music and the sort of entrepreneurship, the innovation that was made available to them when they migrated to America. I think in many ways, these musicians and these, let's say, engineers of music, they saw unlimited opportunity in America. So, for instance, the label above me is the first Greek American-owned record label. This was started around 1919 by Madame Kula, and there were about 220 recordings issued on this label. She was not in the least bit vain, as you can see by her portrait on the label, but also she oftentimes removed any mention of any other artist and just put her own name there. But the Panhellenon label was one of 22 record labels created before World War II, which dwarfs any other ethnic conglomerate starting businesses in the United States. Now, the first recording of Greek music, of the Greek voice, actually took place in 1896 in Washington, D.C. It was recorded by Emil Berliner. But the fact of the matter that up until 1947, 46, 47, the majority of all recordings of Greek music were made in America, not in Greece, not in Turkey, but in America. And Madame Kula was also a singer, not a very good one in my opinion. But what she opened up the doors to were Greeks that were being forced to play sort of generic Greek music. When the fact of the matter is that when these labels proliferated, when the immigration started in 1912, 1913, Greece was emerging out of the Ottoman Empire, at least northern part in the islands. They were emerging out of the Ottoman Empire where the identity was not necessarily national, but regional. And so what Kula did and what so many other artists did was they recorded music specifically from their region, rather than sort of a stereotypical idea of what Greek music should be. So the next recording I'm going to play for you is a lady named Amalia Vaca. She immigrated to the United States 1 year after Alexis Zumbas. Alexis Zumbas immigrated in 1912 after the end of the Second Balkan War. She migrated the next year. She was only 14 years old at the time. And she worked in a sweatshop in New York City sewing garments when somebody heard her singing at her sewing machine and said, "You should go make some records." And what I will be playing for you is basically an Asia Minor manes, a lament. And she's being accompanied by Alexis Zumbas on violin. This is also from 1926. This recording by Amalia, to me, proves many things about the early Greek American music experience, that relatively poor, marginalized people could move from Greece and suddenly express themselves with deep creativity, with themselves believing that had they have stayed in Greece, they would not have been able to do this, that they would have been forced to perform a certain way, and they wouldn't have been able to innovate. The fascinating thing about what happened also is that it was sort of a male-dominated industry in Greece, also in Turkey, where most of these recordings were being made on the European side. But moving to America, suddenly it opened up the doors for multiple women to perform, which I'll show in the next couple of images. Now I have another musical interlude. So now I'm going to try to show some pretty pictures. This is a general catalog from 1930. By this time, there were maybe 400 recordings of Greek music issued in America, recorded in America, and with Columbia being the second largest competitor. Victor Records at that time was at the top of the game with producing Greek music, but also Turkish music, Armenian music. This is a subsidiary label called Orthophonic. What was fascinating that happened was in 1916, the Victor Company hired a Greek guy named Tetios Dimodidis to be in charge of the foreign language recordings. And of course, he sort of tipped the scale in favor of Greek music, Turkish music, Albanian, Armenian, so that at one point, 2 years later, 1/6 of all recordings being sold in the United States came from the Levant. So he created 7 years later his own record label, Orthophonic, where he was working with his brother in Athens, and they were recording people in Athens and in America, and then issuing the material on Orthophonic and selling it back and forth. So within 4 years, he had made his first $1 million, which was pretty considerable in 1932. This was the way in which they kind of looked at ethnic demographics in America at this time period. You can see Philadelphia comes in number 3 in terms of diversity of ethnic backgrounds. But I think they're underreporting the Greeks. There's only 594 here. This is 1914, I believe. No, 1912. But if you look at the figures, so Austro-Hungarian Empire represents the majority. Denmark, French, Germany. Greece comes in, but somehow or another Tetios skewed the numbers so that he actually was outselling the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This is a typical page from a jobber catalog. This catalog came out of New York City. The job that the jobber had was customers would come in and they would want to buy music either that they had heard on the radio or they had read about, or in the case of most of these businesses, what country they came from. And so a jobber would look up like an assortment of discs. In the 1920s, when you bought a phonograph player, not this thing, but the wind-up Victrola model, you were actually buying a piece of furniture. They regarded this as a status symbol. You're buying a piece of furniture. The discs were incidental. The music was just like, thrown in. And so the jobber would just like pick 6 or 8. But what I think is really important with this is that this is Marika Papagika. She was, without a doubt, the most important Greek singer in America. She started singing at the same time as Amalia Vaca, also Alexis Zumbas. And her repertoire was of the music of Smyrna, of Izmir. So the next piece of music I want to play is one of her most famous. It's at the ball, at the Smanias Ball. It's a Smanias Balakos. Oh, this is 1928. One thing about this recording that I think it sheds a lot of light on a letter that Marika wrote back to her father, who was in Patras. She wrote to him saying, "I could never make music like this in Greece." Because what she does with this recording, she's playing the hand castanets, and there's the santuri in the background, which are traditional. But you hear in the background this low pulse of a bowed bass. This was obviously part of her compositional formula. She was able to innovate while she was here. She would not have had that freedom had she had stayed there. And she actually recorded for most of the major labels, as well as quite a few independent labels. So this is one of her earliest recordings on the Victor label. This is 1917. And I'll fast forward a second. This is a Greek-American newspaper out of Atlanta. And you can see on the bottom left, this is Miss Kula's label with her portrait. Her portrait. But right above it, you see a instrument maker in New York. And this page has actually got quite a few instrument makers, because what sort of took off in 1913, 1914, all the way into the early 20s, was a proliferation of Greek-American luthiers making very important instruments. For instance, how many people here have heard of the Beatles? So when they made their first appearance on national television, they were playing Epiphone guitars. Epiphone was the creation of a Greek-American who started his own luthier company in New York. And right above it, you see there's a dealer only in Greek discs that you can actually do specialty mail order. And then another one here in the center, and what he's doing is he's importing discs from Greece and bringing them to America. So if you can't read the fine print, but he says, "Discreet inquiries welcome." Let me see if I can. So this is another independent label out of Chicago, and the person who created this label, Grezi, was he was a violinist from the Peloponnese. He moved to America in 1912, and his first idea was to start his own publishing business, where he would actually like bring compositions, copyright them, and then collect money. Then he started a record label. Then he started a luthier business. Then he started a wholesaler. And Marika Papagica recorded for this label as well. So you want to play another piece? So the exhibit that I propose at the Unitas for next year on this phenomenon of the early Greek American music experience, it touches upon not just the catalogs, the record labels, but also upon the assortment of artists that moved to America, which represent, almost 70% of the music before World War II were by Greek American musicians. But there are also these things which they seem weird now, but back then they were quite common. For instance, Greek piano rolls. So people would buy a special piano that they could play themselves if they wanted to, but also they could buy a long tube that had perforations in it, loaded inside the device, push a button, and it would play the music for them. And there was actually a Greek piano roll company music. And in addition to that, the whole experience was, I think, rejuvenating for Greeks going back and forth, not only for those that stayed in America, but also went back. And they actually ended up changing the music in Greece, which is, I think, kind of weird, that the repertoire that was being developed in America had a profound and direct influence on what was going on back in the mainland. What I'm going to play for you is arguably the most recognizable Greek musical form. So when people think of Greek music, what's the one category you think of? Anybody? Rebetiko, right. So Rimbetica is often thought of like the music of the underworld, drugs, prostitution, etc. But at some point it became this sort of instrumental improvisation. Well, this didn't occur in Greece. It occurred in America. This recording is by a musician. His Greek name was Yannis Hagias, but he went by Jack Gregory. And what he's done is he's taken the bouzouki and he's made it into an instrument capable of almost jazz-like improvisation. You hear this, and then suddenly you're going to say to yourself, if you've been to Greece, oh, I heard that there. That's because this recording was carried back to Greece, and suddenly everybody was copying. It was copied 2 months after it was issued in America by other musicians there. know about you, but when I hear this, I wish I had some Tsiparo. Speaking of which, I have to say a special thanks to Zoe, sitting right here. You know, when we were in Ypres, and I surprised you with the gypsy group that came and roasted the goat and brought the Tsiparo, and then finally it broke into polyphonic singing later on that evening. I love these kind of interactive things where I can bring musicians in, play 78s, tell stories. And before we close with a little bit of live music, I want to show you one important catalog here. So it wasn't just Greek entrepreneurship that spread music from this region all over America. The owner of this record label, the Balkan Phonograph Company, was Albanian, Aslani. And as you can see from his general catalog from 1946, he recorded Greek, Turkish, Armenian, Spanish Oriental, which is Ladino. It's the Sephardic music of Thessaloniki. Turkish, Albanian, and also he's not mentioning, he also did Bulgarian, as well as music from Crete, which is a completely different place than Greece. But these type of things demonstrate that back then there was very little like concern with nationalism. Rather, it was like a regional expression. Like, this is the music of our general people, and this company existed until 1952. The guy was selling out of his shop in New York, pressing them up in the back and selling them in the front. Anyway, so we're going to close with a little live music, and then we're going to have a Q&A. Questions?
If I may ask you, based on the work that you have done, when was the first ever recording of Greek music in Greece? Was it before or after the recordings of the Greek American music here in the U.S.?
The first Greek voice and Greek music was 1896 in Washington, D.C., in America. In 1908 was the first recording of the Motiki Musiki, of a folk song played with Floyera by the gramophone company. However, there were a handful of Greek recordings made in Istanbul between 1904 and 1905. There is the possibility that there were Greek recordings made in Bucharest slightly earlier than that, but none have survived, or at least none have turned up at this point. But there was a recording session in 1904 in Bucharest, Romania, where Albanian polyphonic music was recorded. Albanian instrumental music. I would be shocked that there were not Greeks also recorded that day.
Thank you.
I have a question. In terms of, let's say, recording traditional folk music, the Center for Asia Minor Studies with Melpo Merlier, she was one of the pioneers of this whole thing.
She was the pioneer. Yeah, she was the first folklorist. Yeah, in Greece. Yeah.
How did the music she recorded? Did any of that kind of I don't know how those pressings were. They just simply for research, or did they?
She has an incredible story. So this is a woman, a Greek woman, and she marries a French guy. The French guy happens to be a director of Pathé Records, Pathé Frere Brothers, one of the first motion picture makers in France. They also had a phonograph concern. So in 1930, they set up a temporary studio in Athens, and somehow or another, she convinced them to let her use their studio for 3 days. And she recorded a wide variety of musicians. She recorded musicians from Epirus, Peloponnese, Dodakenes, but also she realized in 1930 that the dialect of Cappadocia, the Cappadocian dialect, was going to be lost because of all the immigrants moving in and assimilating into speaking standardized Greek. So she set up a recording session for Cappadocian singers. All this material was recorded commercially, so it was like the highest possible quality, but it was not resold. Instead, they pressed 20 copies of each and sent them to various institutions in Greece, but in Europe as well. So at this point, there are 3 surviving copies of each recording that she ever made, and they've all been digitized at this point. But she has a very fascinating story. She's like the John Lomax of Greek music. You know. Yes.
We all probably know the movie Rebetiko. Marika, was that Marika or an amalgamation?
That's an amalgamation, yeah, but it's based on the prototype of Marika Papagika, yeah, that she had to leave her homeland to go to that was, I'm trying to think of the director. It'll come to me in a second. He also did Ulysses Gaze, that movie. Angelopoulos, right? Yeah. Yes.
Thanks for sharing the stories and all the music. And I'm curious to know which recording you played for us, if any, were acoustic.
The recording, the first recording I played by Alexis Zumbas was, it was at a transitional, like you would say, a liminal stage in technology. It was 1926, and as you saw, like I changed the pitch here, it was a Westinghouse carbon microphone, so it was electric,
but the spindle that was being used to capture the music was still acoustic. So it was not rotating at 78.5, but at 76.5. So that's why I had to change the speed here. I didn't play any pure acoustics, but quite a few of them sound great, especially the HMV. They have much better horn systems and diaphragm systems for capturing music. But the Westinghouse microphone basically started development in mid-1926, and by 1927 it was general, except for Jeanette Records.
I think we'll take one last question. I think we're in the back.
In your research, we've been told that there was recordings of Rembetika and maybe one of the first here in our Delaware Valley, in Camden, New Jersey. Any?
Yeah, the first what?
Well, one of the first recordings of Greek music was here in our area in Camden.
I mean, probably one of the first commercial recordings done by RCA Victor, which, I mean, Victor had its pressing plant and its studio in Camden. That's correct.
So I wasn't sure if you knew in your research if you came across any of that you can enlighten us a little bit.
I mean, as far as like the earliest Greek recordings,
1920s. I have to go back to where I came.
I mean, there was sporadic recording by all the companies. Victor, Columbia, OK had recording sessions. Even some of the smaller labels like Jeanette recorded Greek material. Mm-hmm. But I think that the stuff that was recorded in Camden would probably have been later, probably like 1926, 1925, something like that.
Down there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, let's thank our speakers.
Thank you.
Feel free, if the exhibition is in the rare books exhibition is still going to be open.
Yeah, and also available for the next couple of months. Our curator, Lynn Farrington over here, was involved in a wonderful exhibition on Aristotle that's in the Goldstein Gallery on the left. It's about reinventing and reimagining him throughout time. So thank you so much for coming. Thanks for everyone who helped make this possible.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.